What does it mean to live a resilient life? I'm Ryan Mannion. I lost my brother to war and my mom to cancer, and I've learned a lot about myself along the way. Now, as the CEO of Travis Mannion Foundation, I'm on a journey to explore what it means to be resilient against life's many challenges. Join me and some incredible guests as we ask ourselves the hard questions and define what it means to struggle well. Okay, welcome to another episode of the Resilient Life Podcast. I'm so excited about today's guest. And Charlotte, I have to tell you, we've done over 100 episodes of this podcast. I have had some really big names on this podcast, and my kids have never been impressed by anything I do, but I told both my daughters, I said, hey, I've got a cool guest coming on, and I said, Charlotte North, and they were both like, what? Are you serious? So you got me some cool mom points, so I really appreciate that. Yeah. But thanks so much for being on today, and super excited to talk a little bit more.
No, thank you for having me. It's awesome. I love what you do. It's so unique and special. And your conversations impact so many people. So I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So, I was obviously I've followed your journey. It's been super incredible. And one of the things that I love is that, and I love this in today's world, is that you didn't start playing lacrosse until 7th grade. And as you know, I didn't start playing lacrosse until 9th grade on a team, on my high school team. I went out. Now, my dad was a lacrosse player in high school and college. And so I used to play with him in the backyard, but when I was growing up, there were no club sports. There was no intramural lacrosse. And so lacrosse wasn't even an option to me until I got to high school. I had a bit of an edge because I had picked up a stick before with my dad, but as you know, it starts earlier and earlier and earlier, and you've got these kids so hyper-focused on one sport. By age 6, it's oh, no, they're all focused on lacrosse. And I think your story is so important as a relevant and, upcoming athlete, that you can talk about the idea that, listen, I wasn't playing lacrosse since I was 3 years old. There wasn't a stick in my hand,
For sure. And I think, you said it perfectly. Today, there are kids all over the country who are playing almost every single day, and every week of the summer. And while that's amazing that there's more opportunity to play, sometimes these kids' schedules get a little too jam-packed, and it doesn't leave a lot of room for them to explore in the backyard, maybe just having a catch with a family member or a teammate, and explore different parts of the game that may interest them. And I didn't start playing until 7th grade. I'm from Dallas, Texas originally, so non-traditional lacrosse area during that time. And it's grown for sure a lot in the southern and western regions of the United States, but there was not a lot of lacrosse where I grew up. So I was into just about every other sport before I picked up my first stick. I loved basketball. I played field hockey. I played everything pretty much. And I wanted to go to the WNBA back when I was in middle school. That was my goal. But when I picked up a lacrosse stick, it was so unique and special. The sport, it's so unique in so many ways, but there's no sport like it that combines speed, athleticism, hand-eye coordination, elite skill. And to me, I just think it's far above and beyond all the rest of the sports out there. So I loved it. I loved every part of it. But I wasn't playing games a ton. I didn't have a ton of practices on my schedule. I got with my coaches down there in Texas, and they influenced me a ton in just teaching me the game and showing me where I could access how to watch the game, whether it was collegiate games that were behind a paywall or old film of some of my favorite players to watch. So it was a little challenging to access these resources, but I wasn't necessarily playing in competition. I was more just going out and shooting and working on different skills that I would see other people do, and I would try to emulate myself, and I just immerse myself in the game, and I still do to this day. But I just think there's so much value in that, and not jamming up your schedule with too many things specific to lacrosse, but all sports. I think I wouldn't be sitting where I am today without the influence that basketball and field hockey and a number of other sports had on my career. I played basketball and field hockey all the way through my senior year of high school. My lacrosse coach actually, my senior year, begged me to stop going out and shooting hoops once the season was over, because I knew I was going to miss it so much. But I think just all those other sports, they help shape all athletes, not only, in their athletic ability on the field or the court, but in their experiences, in their leadership, and the way that they communicate and the way that they act as a teammate. There's just so much value in playing multiple sports. And I tell every young player that I meet to stay in as many sports as possible until they end up going on to pursue one.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And I also was a basketball player. That was my first love as but my 5'3" height didn't, showed me that probably wasn't going to be the path. But I loved basketball, and that was the first sport my dad got me into because, he saw that as a gateway to really being a well-rounded athlete and being able to play at a higher level in other sports. And I look at it today and I see it with my own kids, the pressures that they feel to have to be at every clinic and try out for every all-star team and showcase that's happening. And, it's really hard to explain to a 16-year-old girl who wants to play in college, like, hey, babe, this is a bit of a money grab. Like, that's what it is. Like, what college coaches are actually going to be there, And so, right. But I feel so much for athletes today in general because the pressures that they have to deal with compared to what I dealt with 20 years ago, there were no club teams. College coaches came to my high school games. And we didn't know who was coming. We didn't know when they were going to be there. And after the game, our coach would be like, hey, just so you know, the Penn State coach was there today. And it was just like, oh, cool. And then, and they could call you at any time. There were no rules back then. So freshman year, you kind of knew, oh, these people are interested in you. And it was just it was an easier process. And, it really plays into kind of the mental challenges that I think happen with a lot of athletes today.
Absolutely. And there's so much out there that's at your fingertips, whether it's social media or other areas of exposure that are amazing for our sport because they're allowing us to grow. They're attracting new viewers and new eyeballs, but the pressure has just multiplied as you continue on. And these young girls and boys, across the country, they know what's at stake when they're attempting to be recruited and play in college and achieve their dreams of being able to continue on in their sport. But there's more pressure than ever. There's more eyeballs than ever. So credit to these kids who are working so hard behind the scenes to be prepared and be ready for their moment when they're in these situations. But there are so many events. Sometimes I'm like, I promise if a coach sees you once or twice, it's just as impactful. You don't need to be seen 7 or 8 times by the same coaches. And I know, I always tell people if you do the work behind the scenes and you feel like you're working harder than anyone else out there, everything else will fall into place. And when you go out and play, your performance will speak for itself. It will jump off the page immediately, and you don't need to be seen multiple times if you're doing the work behind the scenes. So, but I mean, there's a bit of a pros and cons to the amount of, rankings that are out there and articles and clips and pieces of exposure. There's a lot that can be achieved. But it's hard to know kind of what's important when you're in high school and you're just trying to be the best athlete, be the best teammate, be the best leader you can be, and work really hard at continuing to develop and then ultimately get recruited. But you're seeing all this happen around you, and your head can start to spin a little bit. So it's hard. It's a challenge. You know, that it's only getting more challenging.
Yeah.
But it's cool to see that more colleges are adding Division I women's lacrosse, and the game is growing, and there are more games on TV, and there's just more opportunity out there. So I hope that's encouraging to the young players that are trying to reach their goal. But it's definitely, you know, a lot of pressure, and that's what the athletes want. They want those moments where you get to step up and perform in those big time opportunities. But it's challenging for sure.
I mean, I feel like it's more challenging from the parent perspective. I was my daughter committed to Navy on July 1st, so she didn't wait till September because she wanted to go there. That was, you know, a dream for her. And July 1st, getting a call from Cindy Timshaw, it was just like, you know, she's like, I'm not waiting. Like the most winningest coach in Division I history is calling me on my cell phone. Like, yes, I'm in. Sign me up. But that leading up to that point, it was like the stress. It was so much for me. Just like I wanted her to achieve that dream, and but there's also this idea, and you know, and again, I'm sitting here talking with you. You're arguably like the best women's lacrosse player in the history of the sport. And I see the way that young girls look up to you, and what you have done to advance this sport is simply incredible. And I hope you know that and you feel that. But I also think it's so important for girls that are picking up a lacrosse stick to understand that the end goal doesn't always have to be playing on a Division I lacrosse team in college. Like, there's so many. I played Division III in college, and I had the best time ever. We made it to the Final Four. It was amazing. And so I'm always trying to have those conversations about, like, that doesn't always have to be the end goal for you. Like, there's so many other incredible opportunities that can exist in your lacrosse career.
Absolutely. There are thousands of different avenues to pursue lacrosse as a passion. I mean, so many players out there, they want different things from the sport, but at the end of the day, the thing that unites us is our love for the game. And it doesn't matter what division you play in. It doesn't matter if you play club. It doesn't matter if you stop playing in high school, or you pick it back up maybe after college and you play in a league of sorts. Or you go on and play professionally or internationally for your country. I mean, there's so many different avenues. But if you love it and you love to work at it, again, I feel like the rest will fall into place, and you'll be right where you're meant to be. And I think that's so cool about the sport. And I mentioned the different schools adding lacrosse. There are so many different levels of lacrosse out there. And I love meeting so many people. I've been very fortunate in my journey to be able to travel to amazing places and interact with different teams and different players from different countries, and learn about their experience in the sport and how they got into it and why they love it, because there are different reasons we all love it. But it's so cool to see, you know, someone who maybe just played in middle school be like, hey, I saw your game on TV, and I loved watching your team do this. And I didn't play in high school, but I love the sport and I stayed connected to it as a fan. I mean, there are thousands of people out there who just love the game. And I think that's so cool. And, you know, lacrosse is now being added into the Olympics in 2028. And there's this kind of build up into what will be the biggest stage that our sport has ever been on. And new viewers will be able to see what our sport is all about. But it's in between, you know, now to that big moment. There are just so many people behind the scenes who are coaching youth teams or starting new high school programs or pushing certain rule changes in the sport or fighting for more media attention in lacrosse. Like, there are so many different categories of people in lacrosse who are getting the sport to where it is. And I think that's really cool as well. Even if you don't continue to play it, you could still have an impact in the sport in so many other ways.
Yeah, totally.
Like you, I mean, you're talking about the sport and you're spreading your knowledge and love for the game with your kids and other people around you. I mean, it's so cool what this sport can do, and the lacrosse community is special.
Yeah, I could not be more excited about lacrosse coming to the Olympics in 2028. It's going to be in LA. Gosh, that's just going to be it's going to be awesome. So excited about
Yeah.
that. All right, I'm going to jump around because I want to make sure I'm hitting like the big things I want to talk to you about. One of the things that I get all the time, and so I have a son and he's 10, he plays lacrosse. You know, he's a long stick defenseman. He's a big kid.
Oh.
And so and my brother played lacrosse in high school. You know, I followed men's lacrosse and I have to tell you that men's lacrosse is so much less subjective than women's lacrosse is. I mean, it's a fact. And if anyone wants to say it's not true, like it is. And, you know, watching my girls play lacrosse in high school, it depended on, and I'm sure you see this all the time, you know, whatever refs walked in that day, you kind of knew what you were going to be able to do and what you weren't going to be able to do. And it was really dependent a lot on the ref. And there's so much subjective nature in the women's game versus the men's game. I'd love to know kind of your take on that. And on top of that, what do you think, if any, should be some changes that we bring to the sport of women's lacrosse?
Yeah, I love this question. It's something we as players, and me as an analyst for ESPN during the college season, we talk about these things a lot, and different ways in which our game can continue to progress, because the way that people are playing lacrosse now is much different from the way people were playing 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and the sport continues to evolve, which is amazing. The equipment has evolved, the technology has evolved, the way people approach the game is much different. And I think, you know, part of the challenge for refs is the game is continuing to develop, and it's getting harder and harder to see everything happening in real time. There's a lot going on the field. For women's lacrosse, it's 12v12 at the collegiate level. And for men, it's 10v10. So in a settled situation, it's 6-on-6 for men. And then for women, it's 7-on-7. So it's a little bit more jam-packed on the women's side. And it makes it harder to see everything. So to see an off-ball illegal screen or someone going through the crease, it's just hard. It's a hard task on the refs, and I don't envy them, because with 3 of them on the field, it's still so challenging to be able to call the game perfectly. I think the game is so skillful and so beautiful and so fast in the nature that women's lacrosse has been. I think, you know, with the developing technology, players are starting to do different things, like I mentioned. But I think, you know, at its root and at its core, we want to continue to showcase the beauty of our game and the speed of our game without changing too much. I think I played internationally and I played professionally, and we play in a 10v10 format. We play in a 6-on-6 in a settled set, and I love the spacing that it allows for, both defensively and offensively. I feel like it showcases really strong 1v1 defenders, and I feel like it also showcases a really brilliant offense in certain things that you run. So I would love to see at all levels women's lacrosse be played in a 10v10 format. I think it would allow for a little bit more and less of a kind of road jam inside the 8-meter. I think it will maybe get us to a place where we're having less of the 3 seconds calls, the shooting spaces, the maybe more dangerous type plays. Of course, we only wear goggles and a mouth guard as our protective equipment. So that's why rules like that and fouls like that are in our rule book, to prevent any dangerous situations. And I think that's very important to maintain in our game, and maintain what our sport has been about and what it looks like. So I think making minor changes like that will continue to enhance our game and showcase how athletic these players are in today's day and age. And I think it will allow for viewers to understand the game a little bit easier. I think, you know, one of the challenges right now is that there's so many disciplines in lacrosse. There's box lacrosse, which is indoor lacrosse, where we wear full pads and use men's equipment. Then there's 6 is lacrosse, which is what's going to be played at the Olympics, which is 6-on-6. It's 5 plus a goalie, and it's similar to basketball. The field is much shorter. It's also similar to hockey in terms of the pace and the shifts. But that's a more simplified version. Everybody goes both ways. There's not really a specialized position besides the goalkeeper. And then there's our traditional game, which is what I mentioned, 12v12 in the college setting, 10v10 for the men. But to see all of that come together and have more of a unified field lacrosse. So when people turn on the TV and they see a lacrosse game, they're not as confused as to what kind of lacrosse it is and why certain rules are applied to this setting and not to others, or the confusing nature of the game. We want to kind of eliminate that, especially as our sport continues to grow. So I think there are some fun things that can be, talked about in terms of continuing to enhance the game, but we're in a pretty awesome spot. And I don't envy the job of the referees. It's incredibly hard to call a game of lacrosse because of how fast the game is and how fast the sport is. But there are some things that I think could continue to push the game forward.
Yeah, and it certainly wasn't a knock on refs. They I have so much respect for refs in all sports. It's a tough job.
So tough.
But, and frankly, the athleticism has changed immensely in the game. And I think, it's being, catching up with that in some way. I mean, there's nothing funnier than watching women's lacrosse with a bunch of guys that only follow men's lacrosse, and like a shooting space gets called and they're like, wait, what's happening? Yeah. And you're trying to explain it. And listen, I'm going to completely age myself, but like my position was first home. Do you even know what that is? Like that was my position when I played lacrosse. It was called first home.
What was that in reference to?
That was the lowest attack. It was first home, second home, third home. That's how you lined up on attack. It was 3 people in a row. I was low attack. So yeah, and so it was a different game. My freshman year of high school, I played with a freaking wooden stick. Like that's crazy, and it started to change pretty rapidly. But again, I was left-handed. And that was my advantage when I walked onto the field, because in high school, I graduated in 98 from high school, and nobody was playing with both hands. Like you played with whatever hand you had. And so my kind of hidden strength was that my dad taught me to play right-handed and left-handed from a young age, and I could roll the crease really well. So that's what I did. That's basically all that I did. I rolled the crease. But I got called for warding so much in college that I showed up at practice one day and my college coach duct taped my hands to my stick. But again, such a different place than where we are now with the athleticism. And again, the things that you did when you showed up on the field in college kind of took it to a different level. There's actually a freshman on the team at Navy. Her name's Alyssa Chung. And I don't know if you've heard of her, but
I've watched her. Yeah.
And I watch her out there, and she's a freshman with my daughter there, and the way she whips that ball on an 8-meter, I mean, it's like she's like a little Charlotte North out there. It's super impressive. But you guys,
some game.
She has some game. You guys play like guys. And that's what you're, I think, starting to see in the evolution of the women's game, is really more taking on some of the way that the men play, which is so exciting to watch in the game, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up watching a lot of women's lacrosse, but a lot of men's lacrosse. When I was growing up in high school, there weren't a lot of women's games on TV. There were mainly men's games on TV, and there weren't a ton of streaming services, but some games on YouTube and things like that. And I watched a lot of men's lacrosse. I watched the Thompson brothers at Albany. I watched a ton of men's lacrosse, and I still do to this day. I think there's a lot more similarities between the two than people think.
Yep.
And we play box lacrosse on the international stage. I'm on the U.S. women's national team for the indoor game, and we obviously we watch a lot of men's box lacrosse and women's box lacrosse, but there's just so many similarities in terms of stick work range and release points and different types of dodges and your approach to a defender, transition game. There's so many more similarities than people think. And I've been lucky with my time at ESPN. I do a halftime segment with Paul Carcaterra, who's one of the best people in this space, in the industry, not just in lacrosse, but in sports broadcasting. And we've been doing different segments on bringing the men's and the women's game together under the same umbrella and talking about different storylines in men's and women's lacrosse, different skills and different demonstrations that apply to both men's and women's lacrosse. I just think there's a ton that these athletes can pull on, and they don't have to just stay in one lane or the other. They can be a fan of both. They can draw on certain players that they like watching in the PLL, the WLL, men's lacrosse in college or women's. They can go out and play, 1v1 with their younger brother. It could be a sport that everyone can learn from anyone.
Yeah.
And it's something I certainly did and continue to do. So I love that there's comparison. I love that skills translate over. And I think, our sport is better together, and you're going to see that at the international level as well as we continue to build towards 2028.
Yeah. So Maggie, my oldest, she played on the first youth box team when she was like 12 years old.
I love it.
And yeah, it was so cool to, put the pads on and just like get her being a little more aggressive. And yeah, I'm a big fan of the women's box. All right. So I want to level set for a second because of course, you have all of these. And I hope you understand, and I'm sure you do, kind of the responsibility you have for what you represent to the sport of women's lacrosse and all of these young girls that, that are idolizing you and looking to follow in your footsteps. But I think it's super important for them to see, not just all your success, but like your failures too. And I'd love for you to kind of share a moment where you failed and how you came back from that.
Yeah, I mean, oh gosh, I've been through a lot. I mean, adversity hits in so many different ways for athletes, and it can be small bump in the road, or it could be something a little bit more glaring that forces you to take a step back and assess where you are and what your goals are and how you're gonna rewire your plan to attack them. It's a part of being a driven athlete. There are so many. I mean, the one that really comes to mind off the jump is, two. I would say after my sophomore year of college, so I started my career at Duke University, and after my sophomore year of college, I went home for the summer. We had missed the NCAA tournament, and I remember being so emotional and just kind of disappointed in myself. And, my goal was to be the best teammate I could possibly be the best athlete for my team and do whatever they needed of me and to make it to that big stage. And it's hard. I mean, it is a gauntlet to play women's lacrosse in the ACC in Division I at the highest level, and to be able to make it out of that gauntlet and make the NCAA tournament is even harder. And then to continue on and to push towards the Final Four is even harder. So I went home and I had a lot of conversations with my mentors and my coaches in Texas. And I decided to enter into the transfer portal. And this was before COVID. So this was before a lot of the fifth years and grad transfers started utilizing the transfer portal. And so I had no idea what the portal even was. I didn't know much about it at all. And it was relatively new. And so that was a moment of a little bit of fear, anxiety, stress, doubting myself a little bit and questioning my ability. And it took a lot of exercise of, positive self-talk and mental toughness to be able to make that decision and to trust in my gut and trust in myself and kind of bet on myself in a way. And I was very, very lucky. The moment I entered that, I got a phone call from Boston College head coach Acacia Walker, one of the most winningest, greatest coaches of all time, who was coached by Cindy Timshaw at Navy. During Acacia's time at Maryland under Cindy. And I mean, it was just a moment of a lifetime to be able to receive an opportunity to play for her at Boston College. But it was a scary leap of faith. Any sort of change when players switch teams, they switch schools at any moment of their career, no matter how old they are. It's scary. You're entering a new environment and you have no idea what the future is going to hold. But all you can do is really do your job and work hard behind the scenes and be the best that you can be for your team. And that's pretty much what I stuck to. But I was lucky the moment I got there that I had a group of people who really embraced me and welcomed me in with open arms. The leaders of that team and program were just second to none, and the culture there, you could tell, was just so special and unique. So that was a challenging moment for sure. The other one that comes to mind is in 2022. It was my 5th year. And my final game for Boston College in the championship game. We played North Carolina, and we had an amazing season, and we had won the national championship the year before. And this was a sold out crowd of 15,000 people at Homewood Field at Johns Hopkins. And it was a perfect day. But I knew no matter what, it was going to be my last game. And so it's a weird feeling, especially as a female athlete, to go into something knowing it's your last and not really knowing what the future is going to hold, whether, you'll end up getting to play professionally or getting a chance to play for your country. You never know. But I knew that was my final college game, and it was a back and forth game, and we ended up losing by 1 in the final minutes of that game. And it was one of the most heartbreaking moments. But then you take a second and you walk into the locker room with your team. And I think in the hardest of moments of adversity, the coolest thing about playing the sport of lacrosse is that it's a team sport, and you will always have that group of girls in the locker room to fall back on. And when you feel, weak in a moment of failure, you're always going to have that group of people, and you're bonded for life. And it's a group of people who will do anything for you and will have your back no matter what. And so despite losing, and it was a tough loss for sure, I walked away just understanding what was really important about my time there and the experiences I've had in lacrosse, which is the people and the bonds that you'll have for the rest of your life. So the moments that I felt failure or felt adversity, there's always a message or a lesson on the back end of it that you realize, maybe not right away, but a few moments later or a few days after, or maybe it takes a couple of weeks or months to understand what the greater message was. But I think adversity is one of the best things that can happen to an athlete, because it just teaches you a lot more than any sort of success will ever teach you.
Yeah, and I think it's also important, you talk about like that team mentality on a team, and again, I think it's important to know that every single, and I say to my kids all the time, like, every single person plays a role on the team, whether you are, the leading scorer or you're on the scout team or whatever it may be. Like, the success of the team rides on each and every one of you playing the role that you were chosen to play on that specific team, and I think that's something that's really hard. Kids are always looking to be like the one, as opposed to understanding that it's a team sport, and the magic of the team happens because everybody has a very specific role.
Absolutely. I think that is so important of a message. It's just one of the most important messages, because you play a team sport and you cannot win. You can't win one game, let alone win a championship, without the 110% buy-in from everybody on that team. And everyone's going to have a role, and nobody's role is more valuable than the next person's, because your role is contributing to the greater success of the team. And whether that's going all out and being the best scout defender that you can possibly be, making your offense's week a living hell for 5 days, preparing them for a game, that has as much of an impact on the outcome of the actual game than someone going up and being the draw taker for the team on game day or being the starting goalie. It literally, it has such a tremendous impact on a team. And you see over the years, the teams that have so much success, that's the common denominator, is there's a team that every single person in that locker room is willing to do anything it takes and sacrifice anything throughout the duration of the year to achieve that goal of winning. And that can be sitting down and watching extra film with a certain player who has not understood a certain concept. It could be anything. It literally, it could be anything. And I think the value of somebody's role on a team is just so important. And as much as, you know, it's cool to be out there on game day, maybe being a starting defender and having one of the biggest matchups. You know, I just think there's so much value, and it's so admirable to see the way people embrace their roles and understand the magnitude of their roles week to week. You know, I can say firsthand from experience that there is no way that we win a national championship or have any sort of success without every single person on that roster and in that locker room just giving their heart and soul to the team every week for 3-hour practices, 2-hour film sessions, extra recovery sessions, you name it. Everybody is bought in, and everybody is rowing in the same direction, and that's how you win.
Yeah, totally. Question about the mental fortitude when you're playing and, you know, people hit their ruts. And I'm sure you've had that over the course of your career. Mentally, how do you stay in the game when you aren't performing where you want to be performing?
That's a great question. It's something that you practice as an athlete. So a lot of people are like, I got to be mentally tougher. You know, I'm having a bad shooting day, or I've turned the ball over a couple times, and everyone says like next play mentality, like have a quick memory, forget about it, and just try to go make the next play and get the ball back. And that's not as easy as it sounds, because you have to practice that in big moments. So for younger players that I get to interact with or coach, I always tell them, you know, you're going through big moments right now. So be aware of what those big moments are, whether it's a rivalry game in high school, or it's a tryout to try to make a team, or it's a championship game. It could be any big moment that you're facing, to acknowledge that you're in that situation, and then take note of your practices and the way that you're talking to yourself and the way that you pick yourself up, or the way that you lean on a teammate to pick you up. Making note of those tendencies that you have is so important, because then you can assess where you need to be better. It's the same thing as a skill out on the field. You watch film and you see over and over, you have these habits that you want to break, or you want to change a part of your game. It's the same thing for your mental performance as well. You got to be able to practice that in those situations. And the earlier you start practicing that, the better you'll be in the bigger moments. Yeah. And I think that's so important. And I was lucky to have coaches in my early days in high school, both in my high school program and my club program, who allowed me to see the value of self-confidence and believing in yourself. And even in moments when I would go to a showcase or a camp and I'd be like, I do not belong here. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm not as skilled as these players. I'm not as athletic as them. I haven't been playing as long as them. And they would make me aware of how I was approaching a situation and how my mental state would affect me. And so they would help me in different tactical ways of developing positive self-talk, and maybe faking certain confidence that I didn't think I had in me. But you've heard, you fake it till you make it. That's something I leaned on a lot in my early days. And just having a sort of practice that you can fall back on when you feel mentally weak, or you feel like you're not having a good performance. And it is something I still battle with in games today. Having a poor shooting performance, you know, you've turned the ball over a couple times, like I mentioned, you got to be able to find ways in which you get pulled out of that in your head. And for me, I've learned over time, that's leaning on my teammates. And a lot of times when I verbalize energy towards my teammates and outwardly cheer them on, I get out of my own headspace and I stop thinking about the mistakes that I'm making, and I try to impact the game in other ways, whether it's lifting up someone else, or it's creating space for someone who has the hot hand to go, or doing things off ball, or contributing in the ride, getting a cause turnover, running out of ground ball out of bounds. There's so many ways you can impact the game, even if it's, you know, you're not having your best day as a 1v1 Dodger, or you name it. So that's what's what's great about the sport of lacrosse too. But I think for me, I've learned over time that the way to get out of my own head is to really lean on my teammates and cheer them on and give them as much of me as I can. And they give it right back to me. So it's all about practices, and as much time as people spend working on their skills, they've got to spend working on their self-belief and their self-confidence, because that is a huge uphill battle that we as female athletes face in the world. And it is a very challenging thing. So I also look at other athletes and role models that I have and look up to, and how they carry themselves in moments of defeat and in challenging moments. Because that's more than half the battle in my eyes, for sure.
I love that you said too, like, as much as you're practicing wall ball, you've got to be practicing like your mental game too. It is equally as important. So love that. All right. We only have a few minutes left, so I want to do some quick fires with you real quick.
Let's go.
Okay. What inspired you to dive into broadcasting, like, and call some of the games? I mean, obviously it's a natural transition, but not every great athlete transitions to a good broadcaster. So quickly, what was the transition like for you, and why did you decide to do it?
It's a whole different role. It's a whole different world, the world of TV and broadcasting. It's been really fun to learn about it, because as much as you want to just talk about your sport, there's so many other moving parts to a broadcast that you have to be aware of.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, it was my love for the sport and my love for wanting to grow the game and grow it through avenues like television that are exploding right now. And I think I just, if you turn into a broadcast that I'm on, you might have to turn the volume down on the TV, because I'm so excited about getting to talk about a big matchup or highlight a player who's crushing it right now. I love it. I love the details of the sport. And in broadcasting, you really get to key in on certain matchups, certain schemes that teams run, the history of our game with certain rivalries. And it all builds into May, when you end at Final Four weekend and Memorial Day weekend. And there's so much I love about our game. And I think the college game is so fun. I'm just lucky that I get to be in the seat that I'm in and get to call some games with some pretty cool people. But broadcasting it's a challenge. It's a whole new world.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Okay. What's your go-to hype song?
Oh, that's tough.
You could do what's your current. Okay. You're superstitious. Okay.
I'm very superstitious. Yes. So as a player, I have to listen to a certain playlist to get ready for a game. There's a number of other superstitions that I have, but I'm going to go with Shipping Up to Boston, because it was our song that we would always finish with in the locker room before we walked out for a game at Boston College. And anytime I hear it in the world today, it just reminds me of some pretty cool moments getting ready for some big games, whether it was a national championship or just, another rivalry game in the season. That's definitely my go-to.
That's a good one. Favorite book or book that's impacted you the most?
Ooh. I love sports books, as you could probably imagine. I love books on leadership, and Captain's Class is one that I'll remember forever. And I read it going into my senior year as a captain for Boston College, and took a lot of valuable lessons from it. And I continue to learn from Acacia and a number of other people about what it looks like to be a good leader in a group of people on a team. And that's something that I've always kept close to me.
Nice. Okay. And if you weren't playing lacrosse, if lacrosse hadn't been your career path, what would you be doing?
Oh, if I didn't play lacrosse, I mean, early on, if you asked me 5 or 10 years ago, I probably would have said women's basketball player in the WNBA. Now I would probably say I'd want to be a golfer on the LPGA tour. I love the game of golf. It's Masters week, of course. Everybody's getting into it, but I love the game of golf. I love being outside. I love how mentally challenging the game is.
Totally.
But that's probably what I would go with now.
Okay, well, so we do a bunch of golf tournaments through the Travis Manning Foundation. So you have an open invitation, and we play at some pretty amazing courses. We have one in, is it in July? Or September at Robert Trent Jones. It's where the Solheim Cup was played last year. And so I got to play on at the course 2 weeks before the Solheim Cup. And so the greens were like, I mean, it was pristine. It was all set
Oh
up.
my
So
God.
yeah, so I'll get in touch with you offline
Yes.
and share, but
Yes.
love to have you come join us. And, I guess I'll finish it. Navy plays Army this weekend. I'm heading up to West Point.
Yes.
So if you have anything you'd like to say to our Navy girls as they head up to West Point to take on Army, obviously I'm being a little
Oh,
biased, but I'm sure they'd love a little message from you.
yeah. I mean, this game, I have chills right now thinking about it because this game means so much in every sport. It goes above and beyond any X's and O's and any wins and losses in any sport of any kind because it means so much. And I love watching both these teams and following them, but just to see what they do and how they impact that group specifically. They're all such natural born leaders and they are willing to go out there and fight till the end, no matter what it looks like on the lacrosse field. To do something for that group of women. And I don't think I've ever seen a more inspiring, strong, courageous group of women out there in the lacrosse world than these two teams. And this game, it's such a special day across all sports, like I mentioned. But for the Navy girls, I think they've had such a tremendous season. I mean, I'm thinking back to their win in Charlottesville over Virginia. That was an epic game, and senior Emily Mezzanese, she's been fun to watch. I mean, I just think there's so much talent on this team. Obviously, they're one of the best coach teams in NCAA. But I think they're continuing to get better every single week. And that game against Loyola, I was on the edge of my seat to the very end. It was amazing. It was what our sport lives for. And I hope that we get to see that matchup again down the road. But I hope that these girls feel immense amount of pride walking out to the field for this game and understand that all of us as lacrosse fans and just fans of these women in general have such admiration for them and all that they do. And we thank them for all that they've done so far and will continue to do. And we're such huge fans from afar. But this game just means so much more. And no matter who wins or loses, it has such an impact on the hearts of all of us. So I can't wait to watch. I wish them good luck, but it's what they're doing is just beyond anything that we could ever imagine. And we're lucky that we get to watch them go out there and compete on the lacrosse field.
Charlotte, thank you so much. This was awesome. Again, thanks for giving me the cool mom points for having you on. And again, thank you for all you do to advance, the sport of women's lacrosse. The role that you have played over the last several years, it's huge. And I hope that you continue to be there for the long run. I know you will. And just so inspired by what you represent to this sport. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It means a lot. I love everything that you're doing. Seriously. You really impact a lot of people that you don't even see. So it's an honor to be here with you. And I'm looking forward to our scramble duo on the golf course soon.
Yes, we're going to get it done for sure.
Yes, let's go.